And as soon as my knee hit the ground, I knew I was getting hit. And he pulled out a knife. He started stabbing me. He was highly trained and skilled in martial arts. He's dragging me over by the fence next to a pickup, which was next to my vet. And I realized he's hauling me into a kill box to deposit them. And this is the whole thing I was taught. They even taught me to spray deodorant on my face so I didn't accidentally sweat when I'm staring eye to eye a foot away from a border agent asking me a ton of questions. We were smuggling marijuana during those years out of Jalisco State, Guadalajara, and then up into Durango, and then in Sinaloa, of course. And all of a sudden it switched to cocaine. And the moment the cocaine came into play there, the money was gigantic. The violence instantly came with it because we were dealing with a whole different segment of that which we had been used to dealing with. But I was done. And the following morning, I walked into the U.S. Attorney's office and I said, "I'm Hal Bradley." And they went, "Oh my God, the primary target of Operation Northern Exposure just walked in."
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Hal Bradley. He's been in the Banditos. He's spent time in Folsom Prison, former cartel smuggler. Now he's an author. He's got an incredible story. He was one of the biggest traffickers in the Pacific Northwest. And man, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you, Tom, for having me on. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, me too.
Appreciate
I,
it.
I want to kick it off with what's the closest you've ever come to dying?
Well, I would say the most recent, I've had multiples, but the most recent was June 6th, June 7th of 2020. I heard a knock on my door at midnight, crawled out of my bed, and I saw a tow truck driver there in uniform wearing the hat that had the company symbol on it and the shirt with this name and the symbol on it. And 10 years earlier, I never would have fallen for it, but I went ahead and opened up the door, asking him what he wanted. And he said, "Is that my Corvette down there behind my building here?" And I said, "It is." And he said, "Well, I'm a tow truck driver and I backed into it." And he said, "Can you come down and we can do the paperwork and look at the damage to your car?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, no problem." And like I said, 10 years earlier, I would have never, ever done something like that. But, it seemed he kind of fit the profile of that. And plus, he was a Caucasian. He wasn't Latino. The people that I knew had targeted contracts on my life. So I go down there, and as soon as he said, I said, "Well, I don't see nothing." And he said, "Well, drop down to your knee and look underneath, and you'll see where I hit by your gas tank." And as soon as my knee hit the ground, I knew I was getting hit. And he pulled out a knife. He started stabbing me. He was highly trained and skilled in martial arts. Back in the early 1970s, when I was in the United States Army going through training, I was in a place called Tigerland. And in Tigerland, that was in Louisiana, we were being trained for Vietnam. That was at the time of the war. And it's amazing. We had the knife fighting training skills and all of that. And he kept trying to stab me at the base of my neck. And I know that it's not only a kill spot, but it instantaneously immobilizes your target. And it's one of the things that we were taught. So in that instant, I realized that he was very skilled. And as he was holding me and stabbing me, and bear in mind, I'm 65 years old when this is going down. And he's dragging me over by the fence next to a pickup, which was next to my vet. And I realized he's hauling me into a kill box to deposit the body. So I took everything in me to struggle and fight him and hold us at least to where there's visibility. In the alley behind my fiveplex here, there's cameras that are installed that are really effective even at night. So I try to divert the activity, if you will, the attempted murder on me to where it could at least be, they could find and track the person through identification. In the last couple knife strikes, I started losing consciousness. I was bleeding out, and my strength was waning rapidly. And he sensed that he had completed what he was there to, because the last one he hit me right on the very top of the head, right here, and took out about a $half size of my flesh and into the skull cap. And I remember as I was going dark that I knew my life was over. I felt death was imminent. And I remember this really calm and this peace that came over me. Now, one of the things you didn't mention to your audience when you were kind of giving them a synopsis of who I am was in the early 1990s when I ended up in federal prison. I also started my seminarial years to study, and I've been a pastor now for 26 years, and my specific field is in hospice ministry. I take people through the dying process. So anyway, the reason I bring that up at this moment in conversation was during that moment of the execution, I went limp. I remember him letting go of me. I was still conscious at that point, and he took off. He figured he had completed his kill. And I was out for I don't know how long, but when I came to, I was able to crawl to the back door of one of my tenants in this fiveplex. And I blacked out again. Next thing I remember is my son's standing over me screaming, "My dad is dying, my dad is dying." And there was two paramedics working on me. The police were present at this point. And then I blacked out again as I was being put in an ambulance. And I revived again at the hospital. They had a forensic team there trying to get any form of viable information because the incident was so recent. And in my 17 years of life as an operator, working for the Department of Justice and having been in many, many countries uh, doing high profile targets, I knew that it was really important to try and fight unconsciousness and give them what I could. Then I explained to them, knowing they didn't know who I was. So I said, listen, I'm a contractor for the Department of Justice. This is a failed kill order. I'm not going to be safe here. They're going to make a move here once they find out that I've made it, which is standard in that world. And and then I blacked out again. And a day and a half later, I came out of the darkness. And I remember the first thought that came to mind was forgiving the man that was sent to kill me. In my 15 years working in the drug cartels as a first a smuggler and later developer of the markets in the Pacific Northwest area for the Sinaloa drug cartel, I remember full well that the people that I grew up with and was involved with, they're very serious people. They don't leave anything to chance. So that's when I came out of it. And I remember being sympathetic for the guy that was sent to kill me because I know what it's like to have a name and an address written on a piece of paper and you're sent to go do something. And so I knew they would come back. So I got a hold of a friend of mine that was a high level trafficker that lived in the area up here. And he brought a couple guys in there. And because I do have a doctorate, I have a doctor title in front of my name. I was able to sign myself out against their objections, but I knew I'd be safer at my residence because upstairs, where I have the entire upstairs floor of the building, I have security gates, things to this nature that can monitor safely any activity outside. So we got me home, and I spent the next 8 or 9 days in bed. I mean, I was so messed up, I couldn't even go to the bathroom. I had to use a bedpan and just slowly recover from the incident. But I've had a couple other close ones. I got kidnapped in Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico, by Mexican federal drug agents in 1993. Yeah. And I was taken to an off-site interrogation center there. And I had gone down that day doing a DEA operation where I was meeting a general in the Mexican army regarding a purchase of 3,000 kilos of cocaine. And what really tipped the case was the kilos were coming from the president of Mexico's brother. So when you're dealing at a caliber of that level of that type of work, uh, they can't afford loose ends either. But I remember as I was being beaten, I was chained and uplifted off the ground, and they were. I mean, it was pretty horrific. I thought I was going to die at that one also, but I heard human or English voices coming through in the background, and I was extracted out of there. And then another one in '03, I was operational in Central America, inserting an intelligence agent into the MS-13 organization down in El Salvador. And I had been in Leavenworth Federal Prison, and I'd befriended a high-ranking officer in the MS-13 during my time in prison. And somehow their intelligence agency were able to get possession of that letter, so they knew who I was. And I was working an operation in Mexico City at the time, and I remember coming out of the embassy, and two guys approached me, and these guys were from El Salvador, and they were intelligence agents. So they took me to dinner, and they said, "We need to insert this guy into their organization. We know you had a relationship with a high-ranking MS-13 member who's now back in his country, and would you be willing to do this? And we'll pay you $75,000 for 3 days." And that's a pretty good paycheck for guys like me that usually make 20, 30, or 40,000 on an entry basis level. So I jumped for it against my contract with the Department of Justice. Just figured it would be fine. And what happened was somebody recognized him, and they grabbed us. We spent 7 weeks being tortured daily. We were moved from dry camp to dry camp. Every day we expected death. So, and then there's the other side, the outlaw side of my life, where I had spent 15 years in the cartel prior to my engaging with the Department of Justice and accepting their offer to become a contractor. And of course, I have witnessed many, many horrific uh, deaths, if you will. I've seen people beheaded. I've seen people with gas poured on them and lit up. I've seen people. My friend Pat, the one I told you about, that came to the hospital, and back in the '80s, we were down there, and we were at a ranch where they hauled a guy out into a open corral area, and brought three Rottweilers in, and they ate him alive. And these are right at the transformation. That would have been 79 or 80, I believe. It's We were smuggling marijuana during those years out of Jalisco State, Guadalajara, and then up into Durango, and then in Sinaloa, of course. And all of a sudden, it switched to cocaine. And the moment the cocaine came into play, there, the money was gigantic. The violence instantly came with it because we were dealing with a whole different segment of that which we had been used to dealing with. The marijuana industry back in the 70s and 80s in Mexico, during the time that Rafael Cara Quintero developed the Sinsemilla bud, why he had it working out of a ranch over in Jalisco, but his primary operation was in the state of Chihuahua. There wasn't a lot of violent activity at that time. And you have to understand, it was hugs and handshakes and everybody's friends. And yeah, okay, here's three cars I got to get loaded, get them stateside. And that's what I was running at the time, was three vehicles with two other drivers. And then the cocaine came into it. And it was horrifying, just horrifying. But we were already in. There's no way you walk away from that world unless you take a step like I did in many years later, where in 1991 to 1994, I was the primary target in the Pacific Northwest of what was known as Operation Northern Exposure. I was the Sinaloa cartel's largest trafficker of cocaine at that time in the Northwest, moving a quarter to a third of a ton of coke at a time. And yeah, it's almost hard to talk about it sometimes because you survive those kind of memories by suppressing them to some extent. And when the nightmares come at night, I'll pull them out and I'll try to make temporary peace with them and put them back inside because they will never go away. But I think also, theologically speaking, by many years, it took me 10 years to get my doctorate in pastoral counseling. My bishop didn't sign off on my dissertation for 3 years instead of two. He just wanted to make sure that I was truly called and planted in the ministry segment that I was in. I later became installed as a senior pastor, and get this, Tom, I'm senior pastor of a church. I got a congregation of 60 to 70 people, and the phone rings, and it's a call from Department of Justice saying, pack a bag, you're on your way to Central America tomorrow morning, be at the airport. Boom. And the next day I'm supposed to be preaching to my pulpit. And I was a senior pastor for 3 years. And I remember in the last year going to Bishop LaFall, the bishop that had reordained me under their society, and telling him, Bishop, I need to take sabbatical because I'm down in Costa Rica buying 500 kilos of cocaine in a whorehouse, and tomorrow morning I'm supposed to be preaching the gospel of Christ in a church. And it became extremely confusing and conflicting to me. And this is my 26th year of being ordained, completing seminarial studies while I was in federal prison. And I don't know if Pete sent you any of the pictures or stuff, the newspaper pictures of me laying hands on dying prisoners and stuff like that. Because I also got certified in hospice counseling during my interim at Springfield Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. I was dealing with incurable, or I was going to die. I was a terminal problem with my liver. It was shutting down. So I sent there to die. And over the course of the first couple of months I was there, a new experimental drug had come out. So I volunteered for it. And here I am 32 years later talking to you. So obviously it worked. But I got certified in hospice counseling. That became my job while I was on chemotherapy for 10 months. So I would sit in these cells with men, helping them going through the dying process. And while I was doing that, I was doing my seminary studies. And after 2.5 years, I completed seminary and was formally ordained at the federal prison that I was at during that time. And this is just before I was transferred out of there and went to Leavenworth. But I remember the Italian mafia guys that were there threw a big spread because everybody knew that it wasn't some kind of hustle for me. They knew that my foundation of my faith was very, very important, very serious. And I even took one of the Dons through the dying process, Don Riccici out of Las Vegas. And because I did this, they felt that I had a favor coming. That's how the Italian mafia was. I don't know if they are anymore. It's been 20 years. But the bottom line is, and to answer your question, yes, I have had multiple near death experiences. I've witnessed horrible, horrific, violent death uh, more times than I'd like to even remember.
Wow.
It's just, yeah, it's just part of the journey, brother. But today, now, as you also know, I am an author. I've written 12 books. And I've written an action adventure series of 11 of them that I've dedicated to special forces teams I've worked with, law enforcement agencies I've worked with, and they're all about one man's war against the cartels. Because we haven't discussed that part of this interview yet, but what happened was in 1993, I had gone to Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico, sat down at the table of the bosses, and told them, "Look, I've made mine. I'm good to go, brothers. But I've got federal heat looking at me. I need to back away from this." And everybody's going hugs and handshakes and sure, I mean, some of these guys I knew from my childhood, living down there in the 60s. And I get back home and I've got 350 kilos of cocaine and two soldados sitting in my driveway where my wife and children are. And I never brought my business to my home ever. And so because I was an underboss, I had the ability to sit there and turn the load around and get them the hell out of there. I didn't want to bust the guys that brought the load because I loved them. I've known them for many years. But I was done. And the following morning, I walked into the U.S. Attorney's office and I said, "I'm Hal Bradley." And they went, "Oh my God, the primary target of Operation Northern Exposure just walked in." And that afternoon, I had a really powerful attorney, very famous attorney. I'm not going to give that information out right now, but he knew the judges and everybody. I mean, he was the guy. If you were an organized criminal like myself, that's who you wanted. And he was fascinated by the case, so of course he accepted it. And I remember we're in a lunchroom up there waiting, and then we got hauled into this other room, and it had a table that was like the length of a football field, or at least it felt like that. It was a big table. And all the way down that table on both sides were alphabet agencies: ATF, DEA, U.S. Customs, IRS, NSA, CIA. Everybody was there because here was Hal Bradley, the number one target, and directly connected to some of these guys since childhood. I've got photographs, brother, of me with El Chapo 43 years ago when Chapo was nothing but a weed merchant like the rest of us were when we were with Rafa and all of them. That was before the actual cartels. And then in around 79 or 80, I'm talking the photo goes back to 45, 46, excuse me, 1975, 1976, 1977 era. But and I look at my friends today, and of course I'm saddened that Chapo's in prison in the United States, especially at ADX Florence. He's underground and he'll be there for the rest of his days. But I also knew these guys in a different way, not just the drug way, but knew them in a personal way. So, and he became the largest drug dealer in the world. He passed Pablo Escobar. He became bigger than all of them. And I got to give it to him. The guy only had a third grade education, and in his hometown of La Tuna, which is by Culiacan, but up in the hills. I mean, they have it's just amazing. This peasant, but he grew up in the cultivation of poppy fields where they would harvest the sap, which made the heroin. He grew up in marijuana as a child. That was his whole life and his whole understanding, and his career was cemented by the time he was 10 years old. But yeah, it was an interesting time historically to be in country. And then I remember in the 80s when special agent of the DEA, Kiki Camarena, was kidnapped by Rafa. and was executed. He was killed. And at that time, I was down there picking up loads of marijuana in country when that incident occurred. And I got the hell out of there, and I didn't come back for 8 months because I knew they killed a federal agent from the United States. Never been done at that time. And yeah, I knew the whole world was going to explode. And it sure as heck did. And we lost a lot of people that I grew up around, knew around. It was insane. But America, they did a righteous thing. They had to let them know never to hit another agent again. And by God, I don't think they ever will.
Yeah.
It cost us. Yeah, I mean that went all the way up to their capital in Mexico City. They started taking out everybody over that. But
Wow.
yeah, but it's interesting. I look today at my ministry. I've been a pastor working in trap houses and homeless camps, and I have people like rape victims that are brought to my house in the middle of the night, and overdose cases. And I'm a former veteran, and I'm a patient at the VA hospital permanently. So they give me the Narcan kits. So if I brought overdose people to my house, I can revive them and get them back on their feet and hopefully see another day. But that's been my ministry now, leaving the actual pulpit arena and working in the homeless camps and shelters for over 20 years now. And I really like it there. I feel home there. And but had I not been a member of the cartels, had I not spent 17 years as an operative undercover, had I not gone through all of these transitions, I wonder how accepted I would be as a pastor in these camps where people can take a look at me and they can see that I'm not like another pastor that they heard in a church. They see a guy that speaks their language, that understands what they're trying to say, because I've been down that road. And I believe that God converts. Well, look at the Apostle Paul. When he was Saul on the road to Damascus, and he's getting there and he got struck down on the road and scales put upon his eyes. And here is Saul, the guy rounding up Christians to put in feed them to the lions. And he was taken to the house of Ananias. And Ananias was in fear because he knew that Saul was having people like him eaten alive by the lions. But when the scales were removed from Saul's eye, emerged Paul, the Apostle Paul. And that's how Paul was born. And he wrote most of the books in the New Testament, and he was the only apostle of the 12 apostles that never walked with Christ. So we never know how God's going to take us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and use those abilities that we learned in a criminal world to forever be able to not only say I'm sorry, but be the example that you are sorry and serve rather than maim or destroy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so. Any
Did you,
questions? I'm ready for you now.
yeah, was there a defining moment when you found your faith? Like, did anything
Yeah, there
happen
was.
like,
It was, yeah, October 19th, 1994, 3:30 in the afternoon. I'd just come out of court, had a contract put on my lap, a hit contract. My wife had served me divorce papers the day before, and I was just sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, which was not a lot of time based on how big I was, but I had spent 19 months working in foreign countries, taking it down and becoming identified by them as a potential to become a contractor. So I'm sitting in my cell and I just couldn't take anymore. I was really broken in that moment. And I looked up and I just said, God, if you are real, I need you right now. And what's crazy, Tom, is an inmate walking by my open door cell heard it, and he came in on one side of me and he dropped to his knees and put a hand on my shoulder and he starts praying for me. Within seconds, another inmate came into my cell, dropped on his knees on the other side of me and put a hand on me. And it was in that moment that all of that kind of stuff broke within me. I didn't have any fear. I didn't have any guilt. I didn't have any anger to any other human being. I felt something I had never felt in my life. And now that's been 31 or 32 years ago, and never once have I questioned my faith in that moment. Not once. And I never will. And I followed the two commandments that Jesus gave us and gave me. One is to love God the Father above all things, but the other one, Tom, is to love everyone. You can't say because I'm mad at you that I don't love you. That doesn't work when you've truly been converted. You either get acquired with it, you either become, I'll say, ordained with it, but I believe it's a lot of like the second epistle that Paul wrote to the Corinthians in the 5th chapter and 17th verse. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creation. The old things pass away. Behold, all things become new. And that is what happened to me in that instant. And it's never, ever, I've never questioned it since.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad, yeah, that came to you. And I want to ask,
Yeah.
how did it come from, yeah, you going from the army to getting involved with cartels? What was the transition there, and how did that happen?
Excellent question. Excellent question. 1969, 1970, I left Seattle, Washington, where I'm at now. And I was sent to a mining camp because I got kicked out of school for smoking a cigarette with two other friends and we got caught. And back in the 60s, they were real radical about stuff like that. So my mom had a friend that owned a mining corporation down in the state of Durango, Mexico. And she said, I don't want my son wandering the streets because she had to work, take care of three young kids. My older brother was in Vietnam in the Marine Corps at that time. And I uh I agreed. I said, yeah, okay, I'll go down into this mining camp, and a big adventure for a 15-year-old kid. Well, from 15 to 16, I lived down there, and that was the time that I started meeting people that when I got out of the military in 1974 to go and visit the village because they would tell me, aquí en su corazón vive la sangre de la ciudad. In your heart pumps the blood of the village. You're one of our children. So come back one day. And in I got out March of 1974, enrolled in college on the GI Bill, and then it's winter break, which was December, January of that year. I decided to go down for a couple of weeks and visit my familia, my village, and that's when I got recruited. So they gave me instructions what kind of a car to get. They bring it down, they put it in a chop shop and built all the compartments in it, and you never forget your first border crossing, and I've done dozens and dozens of them. And I remember pulling up on Highway 2 off of Highway 15, which brings you up to the northern region. And they got a 28-kilometer zone checkpoint for any car that's been in Mexico in the interior. So I go through the checkpoint, no problems, and I get up into Nogales. That was my first crossing site. So I have the sticker scraped off my car, so it looks like I was just a standard tourist going, came across the border for the day and going back in. And this is the whole thing I was taught. They even taught me to spray deodorant on my face so I didn't accidentally sweat when I'm staring eye to eye a foot away from a border agent asking me a ton of questions. Taught me how to stay calm, wear sunglasses that weren't too dark, but they're not too light either. Stay focused and don't take your eyes off of his eyes, not even for a moment. Let him know that you're comfortable in the questions he's asking, you're going to get through. And that was my first run. And I remember crossing into the state of Arizona and going, damn, that was amazing. And I couldn't get back and do another one quick enough. So that's how that started.
How do they treat
It's
you when you're working for them? Are you always scared of them, or were they
No, I
fine?
was family. I was a child from the village. I was somebody that they knew deep down, blonde hair, blue eyed, the only one like that. When I first got there, I'd never even heard Spanish before. And I was living in Vicente Guerrero, Walterio, and Walterio was right by the mines where I would go. And that time, Walterio only had maybe 200, 250 people living. And we would, like on the weekends, they had a pond close to the center of the town, as I remember, and we would all get together and they'd have mariachi playing and we would the women would cook, and the stream that was pouring into that pond, you'd see the women upstream washing laundry, doing their laundry in it. This is a very impoverished peasant village, and but they all loved me. They all had their doors open to me. They just treated me so wonderful, and I never forgot that. So yeah, I felt a real obligation. But during that time that I was down there, in my younger years, being 15 and 16, you're still pretty impressionable. Well, I hooked up with a guy that was about my age, and his father and uncles had a criminal enterprise. This is before cartels, and later became a cartel, a famous one. But yeah, him and I hooked up with each other, and he could never go anywhere alone. He always had bodyguards because of who he was. And so, like on some of the weekends, I would go and stay with him out at the ranch, which was just beautiful. And they had the big swimming pool and they had oh my God, it was just an amazing place. And they would bring girls out to us. And, when you're 15 and 16, there ain't nothing you want more than a girl. And they were always our age. They were beautiful. And There was one named Veronica Saucedo that I still regret to this day that I never snatched up and married. And that was, yeah, 55 years ago.
Yeah.
But I bonded with him. And by the time I did my years in the military and got out, when I got to see him again, he was now an underboss in his family's organization. And he was dangerous, he was powerful, but I didn't have to worry because I was a child with them. And that carried on for 15 years. I stayed a long time in the cartel world. And but I knew when it was time to get out, and I learned that they don't let you out. So I literally had to walk in and do what I had to do to survive my family. And I knew that leaving the cartel, I would need a bigger baseball bat than a normal way of exit. And who bigger than the Department of Justice? And bear in mind now, I've already done almost 4 years in the military. I have that, attitude, motivation, discipline. I understand the chain of command. I understand what I have to do to survive. I was trained for that. Yeah, I realized I was in the Army not even 2 weeks after I turned 17. I took my oath and held my hand up at the age of 16, but they had to wait a few more weeks for me to be legally 17 to go in. So I went through basic school, then I went to AIT at Tigerland, that specialized training camp. And then I went to airborne school and got my paratrooper wings before I was even 18. I was 17, Tom, when I had my wings pinned on my chest. So I had a really good foundation for someone that could be groomed in that type of organization to a leadership possibility, someone they could certainly trust. I was one of them. Even though I was blonde hair and blue eyed, I was one of them. They knew me from childhood. So yeah, they took real advantage of that, and I opened up the transportation routes all the way to Canada from southern Mexico. I set up the safe houses, started developing clients that bought large quantities of narcotics all the way through Vancouver and even up in Alaska. Made trips and established a 50-kilo a month contact person in Anchorage, and on and on and on. And who better than a blonde haired, blue eyed American?
Yeah.
So it was perfect. It was perfect. And but the violence was escalating. It got real dangerous. The cocaine changed our world overnight. And I was witnessing people getting executed. I've of course seen people getting tortured, and that's the one thing Colombia brought to the Mexican cartels. They were trained by the CIA in the tactics of torturing down there, and they graduated that. It used to be if they wanted you dead, they'd just walk up, put a bullet in your head. When I was 15 years old at the mining camp I was at, my personal bodyguard, Senior Mimo, who looked out for me during my time in Mexico, we were having breakfast before heading out that morning, and a guy walked over to the table, and right next to where I was sitting, pulled his gun out and blew this guy away right in front of me. And I'm a 15-year-old kid, and the worst I've ever seen is a fist fight. Never been around it. And I remember Memo taking the guy out of the building and then signaling at the door for me to come outside. And he told me, whatever you see down here, whatever you become aware of, you can never tell anybody. Do you understand this? And I said, yeah, I do. And then he asked how I was with that. Are you okay? And I mean, I was still in shock. I really was. I'm just a kid. And, but that was my first experience to watching violent death. I was my friends were in the 11th grade at high school back in Seattle area. And here I am down in a foreign country seeing stuff like that. And my transportation was a burro. I didn't have my Schwinn bicycle in Mexico. I had a burro that I would take from the mining camp down to Walterio, and I could go down and drink beers at the little cantina that they had in the town, and pass out on the back of Pepe, my burro. And Pepe knew the path to how to get me back to the mining camp. And later, I got further and further traveling with Pepe, going into the canyons and back into some of the rural mountain areas. And I came across these fields that were just full of these beautiful flowers, Tom. And what they were, those were the opium fields. And at first, everybody knew that I was under the protection of Memo, who was very dangerous, very feared man. Everybody feared him. And his specific purpose was to keep me alive because my mother's friend was an organized crime connected man out of New York and Santa Rosa, California, outside of San Francisco, a very powerful man. And my mother had been his friend for decades. And she was a good woman, a decent woman, not a woman that was involved in crime ever. Really focused her whole life to her children. And I can say nothing but God bless her for being the mother she was. I knew what was right from wrong. I grew up in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. Uh, I went to high school until I got kicked out smoking a cigarette and ended up in a mining camp in central Mexico. But the point I'm making is this: when we get exposed, you have to learn to adapt right away to a new environment, a new culture, a new way in order to survive it. And back in the 1960s, Mexico, I mean, it was wild. People would walk into their bar in those small communities and they'd lean a rifle against the bar or whatever, because that's how they ran in those hills and those mountains. And it was just, it was like being in a motion picture would be the best way to describe it. But within a few months, Tom, I adapted to it. I blended right into the culture and the environment. And they saw this too. They saw that I had that ability. And that's why they said, come back to us when you're done with your. And the reason, by the way, that I left, Tom, is my brother had been shot in action in Vietnam. He was in Quezon in 1969. And I was really upset about that. And so I went back stateside at that time, went to Bremerton Naval Hospital and looked at my brother laying in a bed. He had been shot. And I'm looking at all these other guys that are 19, 20 years old in all these beds on that ward. And it just really got to me. It really upset me. And I wanted to pay back for what had been done to my older brother, who all my life had been my hero. And so I went and got a GED. I didn't finish high school. I got the GED instead out of a community college while I was 16. And 2 weeks after I was 17, I was in Fort Knox, Kentucky, starting basic training. So early life came very fast for me. I didn't have the normal childhood like most kids get to go through and process through school and stumble through life and learn things. My environment became critical at the age of 15.
Yeah.
But I knew that I could absorb whatever I was exposed to, and I knew how to get the hell out of a spot if it was going down and going down fast. The military put that in me, and then my years with the cartels. And there's so much I can't talk about, Tom. It just can't. But yeah, it. Who would have thought? Now that I'm 71, almost 72 years old in life, that I've been a ordained minister and pastor since I was 49, 50. It's just amazing, and I love the journey now, and I'm glad that I did survive the things that I did because I can benefit others with that now. And by the way, for your audience to know, every single thing I have shared with you, we have folders. It's all fully documented, everything. Photographs of me with these famous people smuggling with everybody. We have it all. My military time, we have documents showing I was operational undercover going into countries. I don't know why I did it, but something told me to save every scrap of evidence, if you will, to back up the story. And I have two movie producers right now that have been working for the last year on creating a motion picture of my life. And based on having 11 action adventure novels written, Tom, they want to put together an actual TV series where each book could be an entire season. So that's like 10 years
Yeah.
based on, yeah, it's just amazing, brother. So going to
Man,
be
that'd be
exciting
awesome.
year. Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. And of course, it's fictionalized because you have to create it for the screen to
Yeah.
project interest. But the basic, based on a true life story, it is that.
Yeah.
So, so
Wanted to ask you, like, speaking of movies and TV shows, like I've seen a few
yeah.
TV shows on Netflix, about the cartels. How accurate are they?
The one they were Narcos. Are you talking about Narcos?
Yeah, Narcos, that's the one.
Yeah, extremely accurate. I was absolutely amazed because I knew some of those people that they were portraying. And you know how Rafa built the marijuana thing out in the state of Chihuahua and all that. That really happened. I was smuggling pot from him at that time, and he became the father of Sensimilla, the seedless marijuana. Because up until that, yeah, I get kilos for $20 a kilo, bust them down and sell them at 650 a pound in the States. So the money was amazing. For you take $2,500 and invest $2,500 down there off of the old stems and seeds that you don't need type of marijuana, And then all of a sudden, Media came out, and it became competitive with the Northern California Emerald Triangle markets of the indicas and the sativas that were just premium marijuana. But because it was seedless and did have a THC impact that was still accommodating, it stayed live in the markets. But
Yeah.
you got to realize in the late 70s, that's when cocaine came in, and everything changed.
Yeah. Man, yeah, I see that. Did it change because of the money or was it they were using the drugs too? It was,
The violence. The
yeah.
violence came when the money. I mean, brother, they were literally weighing money by semi trucks driving up on scales. They were getting so much cash. I was getting so much money pouring in at that time when moving up here that we literally tore the sheetrock off the walls, pulled the insulation out, and filled the walls full of money and recovered them again because we couldn't even get it packaged and down south fast enough. And we had to learn ways to conceal it and hide it. And when you have that kind of money coming into play, then you have to worry about not only the agencies coming after you, but you got to worry about competition coming after you, people that may want to territorialize the regions and the zones that you're working in. And I remember back in 72, no, excuse me, I'm sorry, back in 1992, when the Cubans came to the Seattle area and decided to come here, and they were pressuring a couple of my multi-level kilo dealers, and I just made a call down south of the border. A week later, there were no Cubans around. They were gone. Boom. So, you have to have the attitude and the discipline to understand that when danger presents itself, because that is danger. If they could have found me or located me at that time, they would have taken me out in a heartbeat just to get rid of the person in charge of the mass marketing that we were doing in this region. And all of that comes just with skill, experience, an understanding, and what I had seen since childhood.
Yeah.
You know what has to be done. There's not a conflict at that point. You just do what you have to do to get it done. And yeah, that's still stays with me.
Yeah.
You just can't forget that stuff. But it's life and death.
Yeah. If for who would you be more scared of? Say someone coming after you now, the government or the cartels?
I would almost have to say the government because everybody knew I was connected to the Sinaloa drug cartel, and you don't want to burn a guy that's working for them. You know it's going to come down. It's going to come down on you hard. And I would chance to guess that the Cubans, when they were coming into this area and trying to set up their Miami, Florida-based operations over here, that they probably didn't know that I was Sinaloa connected, to the largest drug dealers there were at that time, excluding Pablo and the other cartels that were in Colombia down there. But yeah, I would say law enforcement, and you have to understand, I've worked with CIA, I've worked with NSA, I've worked with other agencies that don't operate here in the United States, and they do things their own way, brother, and people disappear all the time. It's just the name of the game. But coming up in the years, and it takes years to have that understanding. You don't learn everything in the first couple of years of working for organized crime syndicates of that caliber. Over the years, you become experienced, you become acclimated, you become you become very dangerous because you know that you're willing to do anything to one, protect and preserve your family, protect and preserve the agency or the organization you're a part of, and to keep yourself alive every day. And I had bodyguards, I had police officer on the payroll in Seattle. I mean, I had intel coming in, so I would know when to make certain decisions, certain judgments, certain movements. It was, in truth, it was a fascinating time. But I knew in 1993, I had every time I go out of my house, I have DEA or customs or somebody following me. And that's when I went to Culiacan and said, "Look, boys, I got to back away from this. I'm heated up." And I was already well off in life. I already had everything I needed. I had the foundation established and ready, and I like work. I love being busy. So I can still remember all the hugs and, yeah, good job. And I said, yeah, I'll set everybody up. I'll turn it over to whoever you send up that you want to represent, and on and on. Yeah, sure, whatever you want, and they used to call me bigotes, which was Spanish for big mustache. And they say, "Orale, bigotes, no problem." I say, we'll go ahead and do this. And I came home to that load waiting for me, which was them saying, "You're never going to walk. So you're going to end up getting whacked." or you're going to end up going to prison for life, because at the level I was at, that wasn't, a 10 or 15 year sentence. That was all day. That was the end of it for you. And that's why I walked in.
Yeah. What's the most amount of money you ever had at one time?
Oh, probably 14 to 15 million at one time, but that's monthly. That was monthly, brother. But I mean, when I started, when the cocaine came, overnight, the money exploded. And it was just as important to get the money south as it was to get the drugs north. It became very sophisticated. I probably had about 30 people at one time working for me. Oh, I know I did. And, I had runners, I had people that were doing distribution, I had people that were doing enforcement. If somebody wasn't paying on time, or somebody was getting a little bit loose with how we had set up and orchestrated things, I had them dragged out of their houses, shoved into phone booths for them, begging me to make sure they got to get back home, as I've got people beating on them. We had our own system and our own way of dealing with things like that. But see, I would have not acted like that had I not grown up like that in the environment of understanding, and that's to stay alive. But yeah, I worried about law enforcement. I was in Folsom Prison before I went into federal system back in 86 to 89. I had already done hardcore time in a hardcore prison, an infamous prison. And because I was connected to the cartels at that time, when I pulled into the Sallyport and Folsom Prison, the word is put on the yard immediately. We got to look out for him. He's a serious player in the organizations in Mexico. And so I had the respect of the Mexicans, and then I had the respect of the Aryan nation, the white boys, the Peckerwoods, because here's somebody, and they when they found out who I was, I could become a stepping stone to conversations and meetings that needed to do to keep the peace on a prison yard, because I could go back and forth between two of them. And the tattoos on my arms and on my chest, they're all, former Nazi stuff, and Aryan Nation stuff, Mexican mafia stuff. I've got it all. And, I have never eradicated it. I did cover up the swastikas. I found them to be insulting later. And but I carry them not as a badge of honor, but as a memory of a time that no longer exists for me. And yeah, and when I hit Folsom Prison, I was 30, and I'd never even been arrested before in my life. So my first experience with law enforcement was ending up in a high security prison. But had I not gone in with that jacket, somebody who was respected, who was known to be affiliated with an extremely dangerous organization, God only knows how it would have turned out. But yeah, I got through it. It was all right.
Yeah.
But everything like that, Tom, in life adds another shield, if you will, of experience to be able to further survive down the road. I mean, you're talking to a man that has gone to war with cartels now for since 1998. When they got me out of, they came to the prison and pulled me out of prison and said, "Do you want to become a contractor?" My time got cut in half instantly, and I walked out of there within days. So you have to perceive all that, and that makes me a critical enemy to some very dangerous people, because I knew the way, I knew the life, I knew exactly how to be inserted into organizations, and you can tell within a few minutes when you're talking to somebody what caliber or what degree or what level they are experience wise. And I was a person that undercover, I could talk to somebody about buying 3 tons of cocaine who's a general in the army, who gets it from the president's brother. That's yeah. So think of that. And I remember one time, I'll share a cool memory with you. I hadn't seen Chapo Guzman in many, many years, El Chapo. And I was down at a wedding in Culiacan, Sinaloa. And this is like, oh my God, many years later. And I'm sitting at the table of bosses, and across from the plaza, my wife is sitting with all the wives. And then at the wedding table, the bride and groom and their parents up there, which is standard. And Los Tigres de la Norte, a very famous Mexican band, was playing at this wedding, because this is a mafia wedding. I mean, these are very rich and powerful people. And I remember all of a sudden these guys come in with AK-47s, and it's like they charged into the ceremony, and the band stopped playing. Everybody sat. We just stayed in place where we were at. God knows what was going on. And then one of the soldiers went back out, and a moment later, El Chapo walks in. And he walks up to the table where the couple are being married, and he presents them with the gift and embraces them. And then he comes over to the table of bosses, which is traditional and customary. And as he's going down the line, one of the guys sitting next to me says, "This is our friend from the Pacific Northwest. This is our brother up there." And Chappell looks at me and he goes, "I know you. I remember you," like that. And I'd never bragged about knowing him or nothing. So none of these guys at the table even knew that I knew Chappell. And Chappell gives me a big old hug and he's smiling, thumbs up and all that. And yeah, boy, that changed the way everybody looked at me that night. And that's kind of like how I like to remember Chapo. When I met him originally, he was just, like I said, in the marijuana business. And at that time, the foundation of the plazas, like the one in Tijuana that the Ariano Felix family did. And I knew Ramon Ariano Felix. I knew one of the brothers, Benjamin and Ramon. And I actually met Ramon when he was 7 years old. His uncle brought him down to visit with Memo. Memo grew up with his uncle. That's how that relationship was. And Ramon Ariano Felix and I would jump on the backs of our burros and we'd go riding. So I got to know him as a little kid. And then all these years later, I'm up in San Ysidro and I'm telling somebody about yeah, Ramon Ariano Felix. And this guy says, "Well, I know how to get in touch with him." So they connected me, and I got to see Ramon that night, and it was just absolutely amazing because here he is moving between 15 and 20 metric tons of cocaine a month. And the last time I saw him, he could barely ride that damn burro as a little kid. And I remember later, I spent 3 days with him down there. We just rocked out, partied out. It was really a great time. But I remember years later when he was shot and killed in Mazatlan, Sinaloa, Mexico, I did get a call and I was told that Ramon had been executed. And yeah, it really left a sadness in my heart. I know that he was a bad guy. I know that he became, extremely dangerous, but what the hell? Every one of us were dangerous. We were all in that world at that time. And yeah, just just history.
Did you
Just
ever feel
history.
in danger around him when he'd changed?
I did. I did. I remember I think it was the second night we were down there snorting coke, banging hookers. I mean, having a hell of a good time. And Ramon got a little bit wiped out at this bar we were at. A very nice bar, by the way. And he's out in the parking lot putting his pistol up in the air and he's firing off rounds and all of this. And I'm going, Jesus Christ, Ramon, what the hell are you doing? And he had a whole bunch of bodyguards around him. And they're all going, "Hey, don't even worry about it, Bigotes, because what cop's going to arrest Ramon Ariano Felix? He doesn't want his family to be staked out on the street the next morning." And okay, yeah, I get it, but that's how Ramon was. And he was very brutal. He was not forgiving people that went against Ramon. Him and El Chapo became enemies. And Chapo was somebody that I knew and greatly respected. And but they had the plaza. They had the Tijuana Plaza and the Ariano Felix. They controlled it all the way through the northern Sonora state, almost, I believe, to Nogales. And Chappell came up there, of course, and he was the one that orchestrated the tunnels and all of that for into the United States for transport of people and drugs. And the Arianos, Felix family found a tunnel in Tijuana, and that is their plaza. You don't tamper with doing your business in their plaza. And a lot of people died over that. I remember all of it real well. And just, it's so strange to talk about it with you right now. It's been so many years ago, Tom, and life's directions have, as a blessing, have moved me into a whole different way of finishing off life as it is.
Yeah.
I truly have a passion for all of you, everybody, and
Yeah.
it's remarkable. And I wonder to myself, would I have that passion if I didn't have that vision of those Rottweilers eating that guy alive? If I didn't have that, if I didn't watch those people on their knees being gassed and torched, and God, looking at mutilated bodies hanging off overpasses up in Juarez, and all of it. And I think that it makes me a really good hospice counselor too. I love aiding and assisting people through the dying process. I've done so many of them over the years, and it's a blessing because you can aid and assist somebody where you can help them remove that anxiety, that question of doubt and fear, help them get the doors closed, like people that they need to see before they check out, so they can say, I'm sorry, or tell them they love them, or whatever it may be. And then also to be prepared immediately for dealing with the grieving family members that have stayed in touch with the person that is passing. And I've got over 2 decades of doing that. And I'm really grateful to God that uh, he took that which was evil and turned it into something of compassion and kindness.
Yep.
And I just, it means the world to me. It really does.
Yeah.
And
Wow, that's
there's,
incredible.
it's been quite a journey, Tom.
Yep.
And it's not over yet, brother.
No, no way. I want to ask, what advice would you give to someone who, wanted to, they just found their faith and where they can learn more?
That's a good question. I like to say to the people that are trying to break away from the world that I had found a way to break away from, that it comes with a price. But if you have something greater than that and stronger than that, which in my case is my faith, my belief, and my ministry and my service to Jesus Christ and God the Father, then what happens is a resolution will form, because everybody's circumstance is different, Tom. But to truly become converted in that, you have to have, number one, an absolute belief. You have to believe it. And then number two, you have to be the example of it. You have to act on your belief. And then I strongly recommend academics. I spent 10 years of my life studying to show myself approved, to be able to, uh, I guess, coexist in the world of people that are lost in their walk in life, and to be able to have intelligent conversations with people that are supposedly founded, firmly planted in our faith, but yet they don't, by example, show that. And you never want to attack somebody. You want to be able to come at them with clear understanding. And this is where the academic foundation comes into play. Now, most people can do 2.5 years, get the seminary years done, and be good with it. But in my case, I was still hungry. I wanted to know more. And so I went for my doctorate. And 13 years later, from start to finish, I had it. And I'm grateful to God for it. I'm grateful that I use it in my walk in life. I still have some nights where I wake up in the jungle yelling. I have bad nights and bad dreams and bad memories, but I immediately can divert that moment of coming out of an aggressive sleep, if you will, and know that I have something greater I can take it to and get resolution if it's only even for that moment. And that's what I do. And it's called being faith-based. Your anchor, you are a new creation. Once you discover the truth of that and you realize the enormity of the power, and like the Gospel of St. John, first chapter, 7th verse, he says, "For God is love." And when you see the power that love has over the power of evil, it's a no-brainer that you want to seek that which is more powerful to exist and survive in whatever time you may have left on this planet. And bear in mind, I'll be 72 years old in October. I've lived a lot of years now, and I don't see an end in sight right now. And also because I have an understanding, Tom, that life goes on after death. I truly know that. And I think that's why God survived me the night that I was hit and left for dead out here, because I never really saw that in that scope until I came out of that fog and was still here. Thank God.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
miracle.
pretty crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it is a miracle. It is. Contract killers, especially trained ones like that guy, don't leave their targets alive.
Yep.
And that's what always puzzled me about it, because I know when I was going limp in his arm in that final moment, I felt him literally let my body go, because he knew that that last blow on my head was it. And he bolted out of here. And next thing you know, a day and a half, 2 days later, I wake up in a hospital bed. But God had purpose, and God had meaning, and God had reason to justify my survivorship, if you will, of that. And the other thing, Tom, that I'd like to share with your audience is, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what you're going through in your life or what you have experienced and survived in your life, it can become an instrument, a tool, which will define the rest of your life. And take that merit into stride, like sex traffic victims that I've worked with and stuff. A lot of them that I've known over the years, well, not a lot, but a few of them have become counselors, aiding and assisting other people that are sex traffic survivors. people like myself that have been high level in the narcotics business in very dangerous organizations. Some people, they'll cooperate with the law and they'll get into the witness protection program and vanish that way. That's their avenue out, whatever. I've never hidden from anybody. When I made my choice to walk in, I was solid with it. And because of having military background and understanding how systems work, I knew I was very valuable to the Department of Justice. I knew it. I had a big card to play there. And I also knew that I was going to go after an enemy that once identified would do everything in their power to kill me. And so just realize this, folks, there's always consequences to the actions that you yourself have manifested in life in your beginning years or whatever. And like guys in the Italian mafia that I knew in federal prison and stuff, once they become made, it's for life. And a lot of them grew up in that culture, the same kind of culture that I was exposed to as a young kid. There's always another path. There's always another option. There's always another reason to go another direction. So to your audience, Tom, I say, keep the cheer and the good faith in your heart, because truly, if you're struggling in your life and you're going through a hard decision-making time, give it to something greater than yourself that you know, trust and believe in, and it will reveal to you your path. It did mine.
Yeah. Is there can you give us any more gospel or anything from the Bible, like a powerful
Plus, yeah,
message?
just remember in 2 Peter 2:24, he said, who his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sin, should come unto righteousness, by whose stripes we were healed. In other words, Jesus Christ not only sacrificed on the cross that day on Golgotha and saved all of our lives eternally, he's telling you that you should follow instruction and follow the decency that is commanded of us once we give our life and surrender it to that path. And I believe that we should love one another. And I'm going to be trying to get to a friend of mine. He's the Archbishop Emmanuel Wakisa he's in Kenya, and he's a high-ranking archbishop. We've been friends for years, and I'm going to try to get over there to see him this year. And my message to the villagers, to the widows, to the orphans, will be to love all people and how to love your enemy. And this is what God put upon my heart to go tell them. So I'm going to be going into war zones, literally, and being with the widows and being with the orphans and being with people that absolutely have every reason in the world to hate the very tribes that took on their families and wiped out their families. But God gave me that message, not Hal. God did. And I've talked to the bishop about it, and he did a confirmation that, yes, that is a most powerfully needed and accepted mission. Then he's already notified the presses about me getting over there this year and all the churches in that area. And so it's going to be a pretty grand thing. And Pete Turner is going to be traveling with me, and he's going to do the documentary. He's going to film it. He'll also be my eyes and ears and basically a bodyguard, because I'll be focusing on delivering the gospels of Christ. Pete's going to be protecting me and keeping an eye. And as we both know, Pete was a spy for 6 years
Yeah.
during his time in Afghanistan, and he worked outside the wire like I did. So we know what to look for, we know what to prepare for, and we know what to do if we need an exit strategy or whatever we've got to do in a moment of something going down. But it'll be nice where I can focus on ministering the gospels of Christ while Pete's watching the audience, keeping us
Yeah.
safe. Yeah.
That's a good combination, you and Pete
Yeah, it
as
is,
well.
brother. It
That's
is.
cool. Um,
Well,
oh,
hey,
oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I got three more questions for you, if that's all right.
Sure, of course.
You've been involved with bikers as well.
Oh yeah, I
What's the
was a
difference between them and the cartels?
well, when I came into the Bandidos Nation, I was in the Amigos, which is a side section of the Bandidos Nation. And the president of the Bandidos in my area here was the one that brought me into that organization. And early on, I was working with teams at that time, and I had a private investigation agency. And that's pretty cool considering I'm the only felon in Washington state history that ever got a private agency license. But that was courtesy of the DOJ. So anyway, yeah, I had friends that were writing, and my first cousin was a Hell's Angel, and he knew a lot of them too. But the Banditos are in this area, not the Angels so much. So I went ahead and prospected for it and got in no time at all, because I grew up here. Everybody knows me. They knew that I was a high level, organized crime guy. But I never got into it to commit crimes, so I never committed any crimes. I didn't get in there to spy on them. It was strictly something for myself. I wanted to know what it felt like to wear a patch on my back, live that lifestyle. And I did it. I was a full patch member for 3.5, 4 years and absolutely loved my brothers, loved it all. But then one day somebody found out that I was doing government contracts and I was allowed to leave in good standing because everybody knew me and knew that I wasn't some spy or plant or whatever. But it just made them nervous because I carried a badge in my wallet. And I had to respect that. But what I really appreciated and what I really liked about it was the way that they approached me about it and
Yeah.
said, hey, people, some of the guys here, oh my God, he's got a badge and I'm around information. But you know what I did too, Tom, is whenever I would see a group of my Bandito brothers getting together and having a meeting, I would make sure that I stayed quite a ways away from it. I didn't want to hear anything. And everybody picked up on that and they knew that. So I had that respect and I had that trust and I respected them. And I'm grateful that I got to spend the years that I did with the patch on my back. It was an absolutely amazing feeling to ride with hundreds of guys. And wherever you go, the way that people, I don't know how it is with you over there in Australia, but when you see a gang of motorcyclists with a patch on their back, doesn't it kind of make you go into awe and you
Yeah.
wonder what they're, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been that. I've done it. And I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was good. It was good. But
Yeah.
it
That's
wasn't
awesome.
permanent for me, brother. Tom,
Yeah.
it was like taking a college course.
Yeah.
But now I know that world and I know it from the inside. And I remember the night I got my bottom rocker when I was a full patch member, and my Bandito friend of mine, a really good buddy of mine right there, that I rode with him every day. And anyway, so he took me out to initiate my rocker, took me to 3 different bars, got me into 3 different bar fights, and bloodied it up. And here I am, the pastor of a church, wearing a patch on his back, undercover operative for the Department of Justice. All of this stuff going on, and I'm sitting here and I'm a pastor and I'm getting in fistfights in bars. And that's how they initiated my patch. But
Yeah.
God love him. God love him. Too funny.
Yeah,
But
that's cool. And
yeah.
and how did you start? So you've gone from all that. How did you start riding? Where does that
Well,
come into it?
I've ridden Harley Davidsons my entire adult life. I've got 40 years on bikes, but
Yeah.
last year I finally sold my '06 Heritage Softail with ape hanger. I like ape hanger handlebars on them. It just makes my back straight. And when I was
Yeah.
captured back in '03, I was tortured every day and I have permanent damage as a result of the captivity and torture. So
Yeah.
I was able to set it up to where I could use it, ride comfortably. And it was a badass bike. I'm sitting here looking at it while I'm talking to you. It's right downstairs. I sold it to one of my tenants.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Wow.
I when I prospected, they knew that my cousin was Hell's Angels Rodney. They knew him. And so that was a real shoe in right there because Rodney was also one of my enforcers back in the 80s when we were dealing with people that didn't pay on time or someone would do a rip off or things of this nature. Roger or Rodney was an extremely dangerous man,
Yeah.
very dangerous. But he had the respect of everybody that knew him. And when law enforcement would come up on my cousin, they'd usually come up with 3 or 4 cars. They would never come with a single car and 2 cops.
Yeah.
That's who he was. His nickname in the Hells Angels was Rodney the Enforcer.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a badass. but but yeah, I started prospecting, and you prospect for a year, and after a year, they pretty well know everything about you. And then you leave prospect phase and go into your full patch phase, and that's when it's really, really, really cool. Then you're in all the club meetings. You're involved in some of the secret stuff that goes on. But I had elected to distance myself purposely from as much of that as possible. And what I loved about the agents that I worked with, these are agents that we're operational outside of the country.
Yeah.
So they have a different mindset about things. And when I got my bottom rocker, I was down in Panama just after I got it. And I was working a mission down there. And I remember we'd come in out of the field that night. We're sitting at this bar, and one of the agents says, hey, got a toast for Hal, man. You got his bottom rocker. He's a full patch member in his club up there. And they said, brother, that's why we're down here doing it. So American people have the right to do and live the way they want. And they honored it instead of said something bad about it. And they
Yeah.
never once asked me to spy on it. No one ever approached me because they knew, number one, I wouldn't do that. And number two, this was for me. I wanted to understand the biker world and from that element,
Yeah.
and I did, and I still do,
Yeah.
and yeah, pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. If you could recommend three books that people should read, what would they be?
Now, the first and foremost would be the King James version of the Holy Bible. Another one would be the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha is a book of Bible, is a book of books that were not canonized to be put into King James, the 1611 version of the Bible. And I think another one, God, I don't know. That's the only two that I can really vouch for. I have a master's degree in metaphysical sciences, so I've studied the Kundalini, I've studied Sanskrit, I've studied the Bhagavad Gita, which is a beautiful book, by the way, and I definitely would recommend that reading. The Torah, I've studied the Quran, all of those major religious books. But what I've come back to, where I have found always most truth, was in the Holy Bible, and I think it's necessary to read, study, and understand the Apocrypha also. There's like the Maccabees and some of the other books that are in it are very significant in the beginning stages and the growth of the Christianity faith that we all see today.
Yep. And a final question for you. I know you got your own books as well.
Yes,
Can you
I
t
do.
can you tell people where people can find them? And what's your writing process?
Well, that's a great question. I had a book that my agent, I'm under contract with my lifelong friend and agent named Victor Mojica, and he has financed everything for me. And the first book we did was called Crisis Victory. And what it was is a combination of survival skills and instincts as to how do you come through a life like I have lived and basically come out on the other end in a humanitarian scale. I wasn't really happy with that book, so I took it off Amazon. But I have A Fox in the Lion's Den, and that is my autobiography. And it's got photos of documents and pictures of me with some of these famous people and all that throughout. And it talks about my journey from the village all the way to today. And the other would be the 11 action adventure novels. And it starts with Operation Tucson Cartel, and it ends up with Operation Russian Cartel at the end, and or Istanbul Cartel, I'm sorry. And I really strongly recommend reading them because the way that I wrote those and formulated those would be in the 17 years of my undercover experiences working with special forces people and various agencies and international agencies and trying to give recognition, true recognition to the heroes that are out there that the society doesn't see. They're a shadow society. We are a shadow society. We exist in the background and do things that help prevent bad things from happening. And you can get them at drhalbradley.com. All lowercase, no caps, just drhalbradley.com. And Thomas, I strongly recommend you look it up because I would really
I'll
enjoy
def
getting your feedback, especially that one that I did about Australia. It's
yeah,
pretty
I'll
cool.
definitely got to check that out. I'll
Yeah,
I'll check it out for
you'll get a
sure, and
kick.
I'll give you some
Yeah,
feedback. I got one more
thank you, my
bonus
brother.
question, one last one.
Sure, of course.
What advice would you give to someone who's putting together their first book?
Boy, that's a good question. Number one is be confident in your material. Number two is when thoughts come to present, carry a notebook in your pocket and write down those thoughts. You can later evolve them into the story segments that you want to create. Number three, study a book that you're familiar with and the way the book is outlined and created yourself. Take a look at that. That's what I did. I was looking at, you remember the old Executioner series, Mac
Yeah,
Mullen?
yeah,
Okay, well, see, my world is like Mac Mullen 20 years later. Instead of the Vietnam War era, I came into the cartel era. So I studied how he put together his material, how he formatted the chapters, how he put together his epilogues, his prologues, all of that. So find something, folks, that you're comfortable with, a book that you have read, and just a paperback. You don't need to get into something big and exhausting. Get into something manageable because you've never written a book before. And Tom, that's how I started. And my editing processes and stuff. I'm the first couple books, I made a lot of mistakes in it. By the third book, I had it down and I was editing without having to have an editor, which your publisher, by the way, can provide all of the people that can do the illustrations, the editing, all of that can be done. I wanted to do it myself. So, to each their own, but find a good publisher. It's critically important. Each one of my books, the 11 action adventure novels that I put out there, ran me basically about $1,000 each. So it's not a gigantic expense. You can get a really good book done with the proper publisher, and it can be anywhere in the world. So if any of you want a recommendation, I could certainly get the information to Tom, and I can forward you the information of a man you can trust with over 20 years in publication. He's not out to make a bunch of money on you. He makes his money in a fair and legitimate way, and he really knows the business. And he even has classes on how to market your books and how to learn where to make it fit and get you Amazon bestseller status, things like this, which is all very important if you're going into other projects later, like myself making a movie of my life, things to this nature. All of this stuff creates a resume. It's very important that you foundate it. And yeah, my guy Bo, I recommend him to anybody in the world.
That's awesome advice, man. I love that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, yeah, and I hope that they take heed. And any of you that are struggling in life right now, having to be confronted with major decisions, I want you to understand that there are consequences to ratifying life and redefining your life. But isn't it worth taking those kind of consequences in tow? Or do you want to stay in the misery that you find yourself in? Because, we all know right from wrong. And I got caught up with the power, the money. I was young, it was adventurous. And then I remember when I landed in prison and I had time to really think about my life and literally tens of thousands of lives that I destroyed, literally destroyed, because cocaine became the hidden evil in everyone's closet that used it. And I am truly sorry. I'm truly sorry. And that's part of the recovery of life in the healing process and redefining your path, your destiny. Just realize you will pay a consequence. But here I am many years later, and it's worth it. The consequence is worth it. I have peace in mind. I have peace and sanctity in my heart. I truly do love everyone. I truly do. Life is precious. Life deserves to be loved. Um, because I've seen the alternatives, and it certainly isn't something any of you need to be carrying in your lives. So, Tom, I want to thank you for letting me share my message through your show today. You're amazing. Pete was real excited about you and I having this time together, and he's pretty careful about who he picks for me to share the story with. So, consider that an honor from Pete. It
Yeah,
is.
that's really cool. I really like both of you guys, and Tim
Yeah, we like
McBride's.
you too.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
all
Tim McBride. I
awesome.
love Tim.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, saltwater cowboy.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Tim and I have a
oh,
yeah, we
sorry.
have a friendship. We have a friendship, Tim and I, because we were both at the same time in history dealing with massive, gigantic things. And so Tim is one of the few people still living that I can turn to and talk to, and I for him. He knows I've had him on my show twice.
Yeah,
It's pretty yeah, pretty good, pretty good. So you did Tim's show, huh?
yeah,
You had
he's
him?
so cool. I love him.
Yeah, he is a saltwater cowboy, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
this
it's
has been
funny.
great. We've covered a lot. I love like the writing, the
Yeah, we did.
cartels. I loved
Yeah,
what you shared from the Bible. I always like learning new
yeah.
prayers or
Amen, brother.
stuff. That's cool. So
Well,
yeah,
maybe somebody will see this show and it'll help them in their life, Tom. That's our hope.
I think so.
Thank you, sir.
Well,
You
thank
take
you,
care.
and yeah, you have a good rest of your day. It's morning there?
I will indeed. Yeah, it's morning here, brother.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm on the other side, brother.
Yeah.
Something
Well,
works out and I can get to Australia. I'm not allowed because of my felony convictions, but I do have some
yeah.
government friendships. So who knows? I think I did some writing about the criminal activity in Perth. So you're going to have to get that book.
I'm getting it. I'll get it.
Yeah, I got to hear from you. So
Yeah.
drhalbradley.com. I love you, brother. God
You
bless
too,
you.
man.
And
Love you, bro.
God keep you and your family.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah,
See
you
you,
too,
man.
buddy. Yeah, you too, mate.
Thomas Berryman TV, MC Wicks. You are now rocking with the greatest. Worldwide universal, we kick games, drop gems. Knowledge expand the brain. We don't speak no lie, this all factual. Travel through sound waves, international. My aura is shining, but that's natural. From the cosmos, supernatural, extraterrestrial with the ill flow. Too high, too elevated. Art and culture is beautiful, we gon' celebrate it. Documented this history in the making. Connecting with the rest of the planet through conversation. Building from the ground up, this the foundation. Through the power of thought manifestation. Gift the gab, champion rap, greatness. Timeless like hieroglyphs. Who would've ever pictured this? Blow.